Part 1. The note: I had just wrapped up a long, exhausting day at work and decided to order food from my favorite sushi place. Ever since Brock, my fiance, passed away under strange circumstances 6 months ago, I'd been trying to adjust to life without him. It was hard. Brock had gotten deeply involved in strange rituals after his mother died, obsessed with the idea of contacting her spirit. He had become distant, and then suddenly he was gone too. His absence left a hole in my life, and no matter what I did, it felt impossible to fill. When the delivery guy arrived, he gave me an odd feeling right away. He held the bag tighter than usual, and instead of handing it over, he stared at me with unsettling intensity. His eyes were dark and piercing, and his presence made my skin crawl. I felt like I knew him somehow, but I couldn't place where. Finally, he let go of the bag without saying a word and walked away. I shut the door behind him, uneasy. As I turned to set the food on the counter, a small slip of paper fell from the bag. I picked it up and read it. Brock is alive. My heart stopped. It couldn't be true. Could it? I threw the door open and ran into the street, but the delivery guy had vanished. My mind raced. Was this some kind of sick joke? Or was Brock somehow out there, alive? I had to know more. For the next 13 days, I ordered the same meal, hoping to see the delivery guy again. Each night, someone new showed up, different drivers with no clues, no notes, and no explanations. By the 13th day, I was losing hope. But then he came back. What did you mean? I asked as soon as I opened the door. The note: Brock is alive. What did you mean by that? The delivery guy looked confused. Ma'am, I think you've got the wrong person, he said. This is my first time delivering here. You're lying. I know it was you. My voice trembled with frustration. How do you know Brock? I don't know any Brock, he said, frowning. I'm just here with your order, and I don't want any trouble. Then why did you leave the note? I demanded, desperate for answers. Look, he said firmly, I didn't leave any note. I don't know what you're talking about. He handed me the food, shook his head, and walked away, leaving me standing in the doorway with more questions than ever. When I opened the food parcel, another note tumbled out. It read, Brock can hear us. Meet me under the bridge on Mount Boulevard tomorrow at 6 p.m. Part 2. The bridge. The next evening, I arrived at the bridge early, the cold wind biting through my coat as I waited. My heart pounded with both dread and hope. If Brock was alive, maybe I'd finally have a chance to understand what had happened. But after an hour, no one came. I waited longer, shivering as the sky darkened. Eventually, I gave up and went home. When I opened my front door, my heart sank. My apartment had been torn apart. Everything was a mess. My TV was gone, the wall art missing, and every drawer had been ransacked. Panic surged through me as I realized I'd been tricked. The delivery guy must have used my grief to lure me away, giving him time to rob my place. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and called 911. The operator told me to stay calm and that officers were on their way. Within minutes, 2 cops arrived, They asked me questions, trying to piece together what had happened, and then sent word to other officers nearby to help. A few minutes later, more officers arrived, bringing shocking news. We found a van in the parking lot. One officer said, "It's loaded with your stolen things. Looks like the thief didn't get away yet." "Is it the delivery guy?" I asked, my voice shaky. "Not sure. We think he might still be inside the building." "Did you check all the rooms?" "No," I admitted. "I was too scared." The officers exchanged a glance, and two of them went to search my apartment while I waited in the hallway. Moments later, I heard a sharp gasp from one of the cops. Another officer rushed out, speaking into his radio with urgency. I followed them to the guest room, fear twisting in my gut. When I peeked inside, my breath caught in my throat. The delivery guy was lying on the floor, dead. Blood pooled around him, and shards of a shattered mirror surrounded his lifeless body. "What happened?" I whispered, horrified. The officers stared at the scene, confused and suspicious. Then one of them pointed to the mirror in the corner of the room. Written in blood were the words, "It was Brock." Part 3. The message. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Was Brock somehow responsible? Was his spirit involved in all of this? None of it made any sense. The police sealed off my apartment as part of the investigation, and I spent the night at my sister's house, unable to sleep. That night, I dreamed of Brock. He looked just as I remembered, handsome, with that familiar, gentle smile that always made me feel safe. In the dream, he reached out to me, his eyes filled with warmth. But just as I was about to touch him, he vanished, leaving me with a strange sense of peace. When I woke up, I felt a calmness I hadn't felt in months. It was as if Brock had sent me a message, telling me everything would be okay. I got out of bed and went to the bathroom, still lost in thought. As I looked into the mirror, I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. For just a moment, I saw Brock's reflection. He smiled at me, the same warm smile from my dream. Tears welled up in my eyes. "I miss you so much," I whispered to his reflection. Slowly, his image faded, but the warmth in my heart remained. I knew, somehow, that Brock was still with me, watching over me, even from the other side. Part 4. The Haunting of Harrow Apartments. Managing Harrow Apartments for over a decade, I've heard countless strange stories. The building has a dark reputation, especially the elevator. Delivery drivers whisper about it, saying it's cursed. Some claim the elevator is haunted, while others say it's just bad luck. Whatever the truth is, I've learned that strange things happen here. The first incident was the most shocking. A young delivery guy entered the elevator with a bag of food, looking a little nervous. CCTV footage showed him standing quietly, waiting for the doors to close. But as soon as they did, his expression changed, his eyes widened in horror, and within seconds, he burst into flames. Just like that, he was gone, reduced to ash in the blink of an eye. No one could explain how or why it happened. The second incident wasn't any easier to understand. An older delivery man entered the elevator, and as soon as the doors shut, he clutched his chest and collapsed. The doctors said it was a stroke, but the timing was uncanny. Then there was the third incident. A woman delivering groceries got into the elevator. The moment the doors closed, she started screaming, staring at something invisible in the corner. She banged on the doors, begging to be let out, but before anyone could help her, she was dead, killed by a heart attack. The strange thing is, these incidents only happen to delivery drivers, never to the residents. And not every delivery person, just a few unlucky ones. Then came Bruce. He was young, carefree, and didn't believe in the stories about the haunted elevator. "It's just an old building," he'd say with a grin. "Nothing's going to happen to me." But something did happen. One day, Bruce got into the elevator with a bag of takeout. The CCTV footage showed him pressing the button for the 10th floor, but after a few seconds, the elevator stopped. Confused, Bruce pressed more buttons, but nothing worked. Then, something terrifying happened. Bruce went completely still, as if he was frozen. And then, slowly, he began to rise off the floor, floating in the air for a few seconds before collapsing. When Bruce woke up, he looked terrified. His eyes darted around the elevator, and he started pressing buttons frantically. Whatever he saw in that elevator, it changed him. And after seeing that footage, I believe in the stories now. The elevator curse. Bruce stood huddled in the corner of the elevator, fists pounding frantically against the steel doors, screaming for help. His face was twisted with pure terror. For a brief second, the grainy security camera caught something eerie, a faint shadow in the corner of the elevator, barely visible, as if it was a figure that didn't belong in this world. Bruce saw it too. He froze, his breath caught in his throat. Then the camera glitched, the screen flickered to black. When the footage came back on, Bruce was gone. The doors had opened and closed, but no one saw him leave. He had simply vanished, leaving no trace behind. The elevator had taken him. It wasn't the first time someone had disappeared in that building's old elevator. The story of its curse goes back nearly a century to the time of the Great Depression. Construction of the building was halted on the 21st floor when funding ran out. The workers, suddenly out of work, were left desperate. With no pay and no way to feed their families, one man's despair pushed him to the edge. He threw himself into the empty elevator shaft from the 21st floor. When construction started again 2 years later, no one ever bothered to search for a body at the bottom of the shaft. The workers just continued building over the rubble, as if nothing had happened. Some say the workers' spirit still haunts the elevator to this day. Maybe it's revenge for being forgotten. Or maybe it's something darker, something tied to the hunger and sorrow he felt before he died. What's strange is that the spirit seems to focus only on people carrying food. As if, even in death, the man is obsessed with what he never had. Maintenance workers have tried inspecting the elevator, but every time they come, they find nothing wrong. It's almost as if the spirit knows when it's being watched and hides itself. The people who live in the building have their own theories. Some believe the worker is trapped, forced to relive his last moments again and again. Others say the elevator is cursed, that anyone who brings food inside will be taken. I've thought about quitting my jobs here. Every time I ride the elevator, I wonder if it will be my last trip. But something keeps me from leaving. Maybe I hope I'll figure out how to break the curse. Or maybe it's fear that if I walk away now, I'll never learn what really happened to Bruce or to the others who vanished before him. Whatever the reason, I know one thing for sure. The elevator is not safe. And if you ever visit this building, never step inside it with food. Underscore 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 underscore. The last delivery a few years ago I used to deliver food for DoorDash. It wasn't the most glamorous job, but it helped me pay the bills. One rainy Saturday night in New York City, I set out on what I thought would be an ordinary shift. The streets were slick with water, and the cold wind cut through my jacket as I rode my scooter, dodging puddles and shady characters. That night, my first stop was an old Chinese takeout place I'd never seen before. It looked run down, like it had been forgotten by the rest of the city. A short, bald man stepped out from the kitchen, holding a parcel wrapped in greasy paper. The place reeked of spoiled meat, and I seriously questioned if the food was even safe to eat. "This order goes to the Myers houses," the man said in a flat voice, handing me the package. "Make sure it gets there before midnight, and whatever you do, don't knock on the door. Just leave it on the porch." "Should I call the customer to let them know it's delivered?" I asked. The man's eyes were cold and empty as he stared at me. "Don't disturb Mrs. Myers," he warned. "It's for your own good." His words gave me the creeps, but I shrugged it off. I've had my fair share of weird deliveries, so I just punched the address into my GPS and set off. The route took me to the outskirts of the city, down an old, abandoned road. I couldn't help but feel uneasy as I rode deeper into the dark, empty streets. Eventually, the GPS led me to a large, crumbling house with boarded-up windows and a porch light flickering weakly. I double-checked the address. It matched. But something about the houses felt wrong, like it didn't belong in this world. A cold shiver ran down my spine. There was no doorbell, so I hesitated. I knew the old man's instructions: leave the food and walk away. But it was dark, and the rain was picking up. I didn't want the food to get ruined, so I gave the heavy oak door a quick knock. The sound echoed through the silent night. A moment later, the door creaked open, and a wrinkled face peeked through the crack. An old woman with glowing blue eyes stared at me from the shadows. "Didn't they tell you not to knock?" she whispered in a raspy voice. "I didn't want to leave your food out in the rain," I explained, handing her the parcel. Her cold fingers brushed against mine, sending chills through me. Just then, thunder boomed, and the rain poured down in sheets. "You can wait inside until the storm passes," she said softly. "Have a glass of wine to warm up." It didn't seem like a bad idea, so I stepped inside. To my surprise, the inside of the house was nothing like the outside. A fire roared in a stone hearth, filling the room with warmth. The furniture was elegant and expensive looking, the air thick with the scent of burning wood. The old woman introduced herself as Eleanor, and invited me to join her for dinner. It felt strange, but I was hungry, so I sat down and ate with her. As we ate, Eleanor chatted about the weather and the city. Her glowing eyes never left mine, and the way she smiled made my skin crawl. Still, the food was surprisingly good, and I cleaned my plate. "Thank you," I said, leaning back in my chair. "That was delicious." Eleanor's grin widened, showing a set of sharp, crooked teeth. "I'm glad you liked it," she said. "Now it's time for dessert." I rubbed my stomach. "I'm too full for dessert," I said with a nervous laugh. Her expression darkened, and she reached for a long, sharp steak knife. "The dessert is for me," she whispered, her eyes gleaming with hunger. "And I've waited a long time for someone like you." Panic shot through me. I tried to stand, but my legs felt like they were made of lead. My head spun, and the warmth from the fire became suffocating. I realized too late that something was very wrong. With a cruel smile, Eleanor stepped closer, the knife glinting in the firelight. Desperation kicked in. I grabbed a brass candlestick from a nearby table and swung it with all my strength. The candlestick connected with a sickening crack, and Eleanor crumpled to the floor. But even then, she didn't stop. She let out an inhuman growl and tried to reach for me. I stumbled toward the door, my vision blurring. My hands fumbled with the lock, but I finally yanked the door open and ran into the pouring rain. I didn't stop running until I saw lights in the distance. A car appeared, and I waved it down before collapsing on the wet road. When I woke up in the hospital, I told the doctors what had happened. They found traces of a drug in my system, probably from the wine. But the strangest part, when the police went to investigate, they couldn't find the restaurant. It had disappeared from the GPS, like it never existed. Now, I'm certain there are secret places in this city, places that feed more than just hunger. And I know one thing for sure. Some deliveries are better left undelivered.